This modern steel plant and railroad remind us of the North's strength at the beginning of the Civil War. The North had 4/5 of the factories, 2/3 of the nation's railroads, 2/3 of the entire population, 3/4 of the nation's wealth, greater ports, shipping facilities, and navy. The South had many experienced military leaders, such as Generals Jackson and Lee. Southern soldiers felt they were fighting not so much for slavery as for their independence. Northerners were fighting to uphold the Constitution and for one nation indivisible. The first volunteers of the South and the North thought war was a gay adventure. All troops were very green and untrained. Many soldiers were very young. In the Union or federal ranks, 2,000 were under 14 years of age. 200,000 were 16 or younger. Most soldiers were 18 to 35. Many friends, even brothers, would find themselves facing each other in battle. 3 of Henry Clay's grandsons were in the Union Army. 4 joined the Confederacy. All were Americans, fighting for their ideals. Richmond, Virginia became the capital of the Confederacy. Into Richmond poured excited regiments with spirited pride in their cause. The cry arose, "On to Washington, capture the capital, and end the war." Washington replied, "On to Richmond, and end the rebellion." Neither of the armies was trained for battle, but the public and press demanded action. So unready boys waved goodbye to cheering crowds and marched away to the war's first major battle. Only the main campaigns of the North to split the Confederacy and the South's efforts to invade the North will be described here in our story. The blue arrows trace the Federal strategy in the South, and the red arrows trace the Confederate offensives in the North. These guns near Richmond remind us of Southern strategy: to let the North extend itself by invading Southern fortified territory. Jefferson Davis thought English need for cotton would cause England to aid the Confederacy. Meanwhile, he hoped the North would tire of the war. Less than 30 miles from Washington, near Manassas Junction in Virginia, a Confederate army blocked an invasion route to Richmond. Entrenched behind a stream called Bull Run, the Confederates waited. The Federal Army attacked in July 1861. At this stone bridge, green, outnumbered boys of the South with superior leadership made a stubborn stand. Untrained Northern boys had to take the offensive and launch their first charge. A Confederate officer pointed to General Thomas Jackson and said, "Look, there's Jackson standing like a stone wall. Rally behind the Virginians." Thus a great Southern general, Stonewall Jackson, got his famous name. Here, the battle was fought. Finally, Northern boys were forced into disorderly retreat back to Washington. The stone house and the little stream which comforted the wounded are still there, now quiet and peaceful. The South won again when General McClellan's Federal Army, going by way of Williamsburg, failed to capture Richmond. President Lincoln tried in vain to find generals who could match the daring leaders of the South. Meanwhile, federal forces set forth to seize the Mississippi Valley. General U.S. Grant and his army captured Fort Donelson. Confederate forces rushed to stop Grant's advance southward. The armies met head-on at Shiloh. Fort Donelson's loss was a crushing blow to the South. When the Confederate General Buckner, close friend of Grant's, asked for surrender terms, Grant bluntly replied, "Unconditional surrender." Thereafter, he was known as Unconditional Surrender Grant. This modern railroad yard is a reminder of the vital part that railroads played in the war. A route through Corinth was an important Confederate supply line from the Mississippi Valley to the Atlantic coast. After Fort Donelson, Grant marched on to Corinth. Here at Shiloh Church, Tennessee, General Johnson's Confederate Army clashed with Grant's forces. Again, all troops were pathetically untrained. Many received their muskets on the way to battle. In this peach orchard, bullets cut blossoms so fast they covered the wounded like falling snow. Here, General Johnson was killed, a great loss to the South. General Beauregard assumed command. Here, along a sunken road, brave Confederate boys charged stubborn Federal lines a dozen times. So hotly, it was called the Hornet's Nest. But Grant's greater numbers forced the Confederates from the field. Here, the South's hope of destroying Grant's army was lost. But Grant's tired army did not pursue. However, the Mississippi Valley was being split from the Confederacy. American valor at Shiloh has never been forgotten. The upper Mississippi River came under federal control when fast ironclad gunboats seized Island Number 10 and went on to capture Memphis, Tennessee in June 1862. Past blazing guns of two forts, federal gunboats of Commodores Farragut and Porter boldly fought their way and captured New Orleans. All the Mississippi River, except Vicksburg and Port Hudson, was now in federal hands. The Union blockade of Atlantic ports and the Mississippi River cut the Confederacy off from world trade and badly needed supplies. The North had 90 warships. The South had no warships and little means to create a navy. The Civil War brought great changes in ships and guns. Ironclads had won control of the Mississippi. Later, the Confederates made an ironclad from a captured Union ship, the Merrimac, covering its sides with iron plate. The old Merrimac, renamed the Virginia, easily sank two Union blockading vessels in Hampton Roads. The South was jubilant. Her iron ship would raise the blockade, destroy Washington, and end the war. But the very next day, the new federal ironclad Monitor appeared with a revolving gun turret, a new idea in warfare. Side by side, they fought. Unharmed, both withdrew from the scene. The North's blockade continued. September 1862, General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army invaded the North. In Maryland were rich supplies badly needed by Lee's hungry, ragged troops. Moreover, a Southern victory might encourage aid from England. A Federal army raced to stop Lee. At Antietam Creek, Near Sharpsburg, Maryland, the Federal Army of the Potomac caught Lee's Army of Northern Virginia September 17, 1862. The Battle of Antietam played a major role in the war. On this field, every stalk of corn then standing was leveled to the ground by musket and cannon fire. Here, equally brave Southern men in gray and Northern men in blue upheld the highest tradition of American valor. A monument marks the field where Clara Barton, with her wagon loads of supplies donated by Washington citizens, tenderly cared for the wounded. Clara Barton later founded the American Red Cross. Along this lane came strong Federal forces aiming to break the Confederate line. Outnumbered 2-1, Southern generals in masterful maneuvering time and again had plugged gaps in their lines. This was the next test. Here, along a sunken road, the armies met. They charged and countercharged for 3 furious hours. The shattered Confederates were forced to withdraw. Monuments now honor the blue and the gray on the fields of Antietam. The crucial moment came when Federal General Burnside's men crossed a bridge at Antietam Creek. Lee now faced disaster, but General Hill's famous Confederate division drove the Federals back across the bridge. The battle ended at sunset, when both sides, exhausted, ceased firing. Neither side claimed victory. Lee gathered his broken army and led it back into Virginia. His invasion and the Battle of Antietam were over. Failure here at Antietam had ended the South's hope of securing aid from England. But it was enough of a victory to enable President Lincoln to announce that he would issue the Emancipation Proclamation. The final Emancipation Proclamation was issued January 1st, 1863. The Union cause now became twofold: to preserve the Union and to give all Americans human liberty. The war would go on until both goals had been reached.